This is the GPD Win Max 2 2025, and this is the Ryzen 9 370 version with 64 gigabytes and 2 terabytes hard drive already installed. I'm hoping this is going to be a killer PC just in your bag at all times. I'm hoping this is going to be my sort of everything PC. This is my first look at it today. And this was prompted when I turned on my laptop to write an email and the fans went absolutely crazy. I mean, I was just writing an email and I just thought, this is ridiculous. And then I was editing with it on my lap and it was just impossibly hot. And I'm using an external drive to edit off, and that's just annoying, to be honest. So there's lots of things that I'm excited to see for this one. It is a gaming handheld and I'm not expecting to do that much gaming on it, but I will try, of course, some games just for the purposes of review. And maybe this isn't going to be any different. Maybe this will get just as hot. Maybe it'll get really loud when it's just trying to do simple things like write an email. We will see. It really is a nice looking machine. I wasn't expecting it to look so pinkish, to be honest, but there we are. And I thought this was an incredible deal. A Ryzen 9 with that much RAM, with a large hard drive, looks really good. I bought it myself. I bought it from Indiegogo. I did have to pay import taxes on it, just a sensible amount, a sensible 10%. But they also have their own resellers in country, so you can always look that way. They've got an interesting range of mini PCs and a full dual screen laptop, all of which have these really high spec processors in them. I mean, that's a really nice looking keyboard. One thing that I did wonder is how does it compare in terms of size compared to a full size keyboard, so we'll see that. And of course this little trackpad is going to get annoying, but yeah, it's quite positive still in terms of a click. That's not too bad for it just being there. It is a US layout keyboard, so I'll just stick with that. So we'll see, maybe this won't be any different from my other laptop. My other laptop does have dedicated graphics, whereas this is just the Ryzen iGPU, so there's that. I mean, look at that. It does have a touchscreen at this size. I'm actually not too disappointed with the screen at this size so far, but of course you need a lot of screen real estate for video editing, and that's something that I really want to do on this device, so we're gonna see. I'll just go through the first setup of Windows. It does have a fingerprint reader on the front here on the power button, so let's go ahead and do that. And I've just measured it and it's slightly shorter, the distance between the Q and the P, so it is going to be a little bit cramped to actually type on here. And of course there's no numpad. It does also have pen support. I think it's with a Microsoft Pen Protocol pen, but I won't be using that. I'm not interested in note-taking on a device that's as chunky as this. But it's surprisingly light, actually. One thing I'm thinking about is, actually, it's going to be about the same sort of size as the e-ink tablets that I review. A 10-inch kind of screen. And that could be a really nice setup, actually. An e-ink tablet and a tiny little PC just chucking in your bag. Editing. Fan noise is kicked up. I like the little turn down the fan noise, just like so. So maybe it'll get just as hot, or maybe I'll find other things annoying about this setup. Maybe what I'm really wanting though is for there to be good enough native Windows apps for Windows on ARM to be a real actual alternative to x86 processors like this. But right now I couldn't find anything with this spec at close to this price. And as a reviewer, I'm really interested to know what this generation of AMD compares to the Intel Ultra that I have in my main laptop. That main laptop also has an eGPU, and of course we're reliant on the iGPU here on this HX 370, but it does have an OCuLink port as well. So I think at some point I will try that with an external GPU, especially for me, for video editing, just for video output. That's going to speed things along, and I'm just interested to see how that works. Whilst we're here, let's have a look at the input and output. It does have one USB 4 port here and another USB port, a HDMI, obviously OCuLink port there. On this side, 2 USB-As. On this side, full-size SD and micro SD as well. And on the back here, a second SSD port for a tiny little 2230 M2 slot. So that's what I'm looking forward to, because for video editing, ultra-fast drives and ultra-fast RAM is going to be really quite good. It does say the handheld kind of version here. There's an option for a 4G antenna, which I probably will get. And then there's the gaming sort of setup, your 2 trigger buttons and your 2 shoulder buttons and this little button underneath, which I've heard people just say that gets in the way and you sort of accidentally press it when you don't want to. And then the cool thing about this, having these handheld controls with the D-pad, with the little PlayStation style buttons, but also you can cover these with these little magnetic slips that hide away there, so you can look a bit more professional should you need to, and not be distracted and start playing that game. As I say, I'm hopeful this can be my sort of everything PC. Have a bit of a dock setup, maybe with an e-ink screen on my second desk, and carry it everywhere and just continue working in those smaller places. It really does seem like it's the right size just to chuck in a bag and take with me more places, for instance airplane seats, or on holiday when we're staying in maybe smaller, more cramped accommodation. And although I'm not much of a gamer, I think these handhelds are really cool, and certainly these crossover laptops are really cool, and they've got a range of different ones. This seems, for all of the GPD range, to be the closest to a normal laptop rather than a handheld system. But I think you can pick here which sort of mix, where on that spectrum you lie. Are you a bit more of a productivity person just with occasional gaming, or are you a gamer first but you want to be able to plug that PC in and use it connected to a dock, maybe in the case of this more handheld variety. But I'm thinking maybe I will play a couple of games on it. Maybe I'll play through Final Fantasy VII Remake, or maybe I'm also thinking Red Dead Redemption might be quite a good shout as well. Let me know what you want to see me install on there and have a go with as well. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the little MacBooks that you used to get. Those Diddy things, I think they were about this sort of 10-inch, and they were really appealing until you kind of got to use them and you realized that they just didn't have the same power as the MacBook Pros at the time. So this is certainly a powerful laptop in here though. One place I'm also finding myself a bit more often is sort of sitting in my car, having dropped my kids off at clubs, and I think this would be the right size just for actually using proper full-on desktop PC apps just there on my lap whilst I wait. In this video, I'm just gonna get it all set up, run Geekbench. I'm gonna also install this little hard drive on it as well. And then I'll have a look at actually tuning the RAM, because that's something I read you can do. And then I'll get lots of software installed and I'll really test it out and be back with a second video. So let's see how easy this is to do. Okay, well, the first thing I can tell you is that you'll need what I don't have, which is a tiny little Phillips head with quite a long actual neck to be able to get into that PCIe port, so that will come later. If you're interested to know what you get in the box, you just get a C2C cable, and you do get, I think it's a 100-watt power delivery charger, is it? I got an American one, which is a bit frustrating, but there we are. I'm sure it will have said somewhere in the detail that's what I get, so that's that, and some legal information, I suppose. But now I'm running OBS on it, and I forgot how much it fights you to install Chrome, incidentally. It's a bit ridiculous. And let's go ahead and run the CPU benchmark on that, and you can see 890M graphics, which supposedly that's quite a good graphics for an iGPU. We will see how that works. And incidentally, I'm finding it okay to navigate around it with the touchscreen and a little bit of this trackpad where necessary. And the keyboard is a little bit cramped, but you can type on it. Okay. I don't know why, but they have partitioned the C drive into two. I don't know why that's come like that, so I'll have to sort that out at some point, especially as I'll be putting the second drive in there. And one thing I will be very keen to test is how the battery power works when I'm running intensive things, for example, video editing, which I do plan on doing a fair bit on here. That's my main use case with it. One thing I think that perhaps they could go for, remember PCs used to have like removable batteries? That would be quite nice. If you can actually just carry around a spare battery, might be quite good. But I think it also runs on power delivery, so maybe a power delivery charging brick. Maybe that would actually extend out the battery life, such that you can maybe get a full flight of video editing with it. That's what I would aim for, really. And I'll be interested to try the built-in program, which is called Motion Assistant, which allows you to sort of change, yeah, you can see straight away, all in Chinese at this point. That allows you to configure how much power it's using and whether you can allocate RAM to the GPU. I think you can change RAM speed in there as well, but that'd be an absolute nuisance. If I have to use Google Lens to read Chinese the whole time, then that will be quite a nuisance, won't it? Have not found, that says, so Motion Assistant clearly can't run at this point, so a bit disappointing in that regard. So there we go, I now have one volume of the C drive, which makes much more sense in this day and age. I'm glad because I can say I managed to do that without having to look up a tutorial, so I managed to find the right settings and sort that. And I can tell you that this is the fastest processor that I have at the minute, including the Beelink EQR6, which actually did really well on the single core score. that even did better than the Ultra 7 with the 155H. So this blows that away. And of course, better than the i9 in my aging aircraft carrier that I have going on here. And this is the first time though the actual iGPU has actually beaten the GPU which is in that aircraft carrier in that desktop PC, which is just a 1060. That is, you know, a good score for an iGPU. It doesn't quite match the 4070 that I have in my dedicated GPU laptop, which will still of course come into play when I want to do those more in-depth edits, but I'm looking forward to using this for editing on the go. I'm going to try other things out. Let me know what other benchmarks that you want me to run in a follow-up video. Let me know what games you want to see run on it as well. But this is a really good recipe. Fast RAM, fast processor, a fast SSD, and soon 2 fast SSDs in there. Will I need to be investing in an external GPU? I'm not sure. And so far, having used it, it's stayed quite cool. It's stayed quite quiet. Good signs so far. And I'm going to get all my programs installed, and yeah, I'll let you know my full thoughts in a full review coming soon. That fingerprint reader is letting it down a little bit though. Speakers aren't too bad on here as well. So yeah, benchmark results, there's no surprises really. The graphics is letting it down in terms of its gaming performance. So yeah, maybe an eGPU is something that you'd want to have if you wanted to bring this home and dock it and then carry it around to game with. But everything else really, really good. And actually as a desktop PC, it's getting 88% aircraft carrier status, which is what my desktop PC actually gets as well. The touchscreen seems to disable when it's got a mouse connected. Is that what's... No, the touchscreen has just stopped working. So maybe I've hit a key to mean that that's stopped. Who knows? We'll see when we reboot. But what was interesting about this for me is, yeah, okay, the CPU not working great in here, but the CPU is still quite high itself. Graphics, of course, not so great, but a 2 terabyte drive here. Not sure what the branding is from this point. I will open this up at some point in the video, but 515% amazing. And then the RAM, you've got 4 sticks, it says, of 16 gigabyte. Again, I'm not sure if that, I would expect that to have been 2 at 32, but we'll see. Performing way above expectations, so 199%. So actually, I think this is looking really good. So one other thing that I can say now as well, it certainly started making a lot of noise, but actually it stayed pretty cool whilst it was just doing all those installs just there. Yeah, I can't see any way to install this motion assistant thing, and that's, I think, the software you use to allocate more or less of your system memory to the GPU. So that's something that I did want to play about with, but we'll try that next time. But in the BIOS then, I have been able to go into memory configuration and change the maximum. It was on auto, so I might have been powering up to that 8,000 mega transfers per second. So I'm going to leave it on 8,000 mega transfers per second now, save and exit that, and then I'm going to go ahead and run those benchmarks again and see if that makes any difference at all. And I think that would just be nice for my kind of workflow where I'm going across from different graphics apps. Having more memory and it being fast memory is going to be really, really useful. What it really is for though, and this is an AI PC, although there's no Copilot button for it, it's got a 80 tops, I think, MPU in it, but will I see that MPU fire up for anything at all that I do on here? That's another question. I think one thing that Copilot PCs are supposed to do is sort of take these screenshots all the time, this memory recall it is, so that you'll be able to quickly get back to places just by sort of contextual searching. So instead of having to remember the name of the file, you could say, take me back to that file where I was working on that bit of a project, for instance. Ah, there's a shortcut to motion assistant there. Let's try just booting it that way then. Okay, there we go. And yes, the touchscreen has come back. There it is. So that's what I was looking for. So getting that from the start menu for some reason just didn't take me where I wanted to go. So this is where you can change the TDP. So the TDP is how much power is being given to the GPU basically. So that can change its performance. Don't know really what I'm looking at this point here, but you can lower that. And so let's say I was to run that down at 5 watts. Sure, it would take a big hit on the performance, but it would last for longer. So, okay, let's try that now. One other thing which was also interesting is, yes, it started making quite a bit of fan noise when it was installing, but it does have a function, and click here to just lower the fan noise at any given time. So that's quite good there. And you've got 3 custom TDP modes. You can also, and your different fan noise settings as well. So that's just turned it straight off and turn it right up. Should you want to just leave it on a very high fan noise? So that's good. I think that's back onto auto. My CPU temperature is down at 42.9, which is good. So let's try a couple of things. I've just increased that RAM speed. So I'm going to run the Geekbench again and see if that comes out any better. I don't think it should because it's a CPU benchmark, but it is going to be doing sequential reads and writes and using the memory and transferring those things. And then I'll come back and I'll run that at a lower TDP. I haven't got the auto limit on. Let's just try that out. And I'll run the GPU benchmark with it down low and up high as well. And then I guess plugging in, it's used a fair amount of its battery. Yeah, 50% so far, just doing all those installs. I don't think it started on 100% incidentally, so let's try out these different things. I think there's a shortcut as well for these TDP settings, but I don't know where. I'm gonna have to read some manuals. This, incidentally, that turns it so this can be used like a mouse, I believe. And we'll see if that works. So no, that didn't actually improve the Geekbench CPU score. So I'd say for most users, you don't need to go ahead and go into the BIOS to change those things. But let's find out about the TDP on the graphics card and see if that affects the GPU benchmark. I'm going to turn it right down because that's what I'm interested in. Can I actually get a very low power output by putting that right down? And does it give me much of a penalty in terms of the GPU performance? Yes, that has taken quite a hit. That's actually cut it down by a third. So let's go ahead and do the kind of opposite and ramp that right up. Go to a maximum, well, maximum on that line is 28, but I'm pretty sure the maximum is 35. So let's try that. And I'm guessing this is when it's on battery power, and that's when it's plugged in. So try the same thing now, GPU benchmark. So yes, that certainly has improved it. So basically 39,000, whereas it was at 36 before 1,000. So it has improved matters. I guess that on that first GPU benchmark, it was actually clocking up the TDP automatically. So there's that. Again, most users won't need to dive into this to get the most out of this setup, I think. Now, somewhere in here is the ability to actually send your GPU some more RAM. So I'd love to be able to try that at this point. We'll see if I can get that figured out. Yeah, so here we go. In the Radeon graphics driver, I can go to tuning. I can either just set it to take quite a lot of the system RAM, or I can set my own, I can set it to even, let's just go big or go home really. Let's actually give the graphics cards 32 gigabytes of my RAM, my very fast RAM, remember. Restart the system, still nice and cool. I'm really pleased with the screen, by the way, and I did think, is it a bit overkill to have QHD screen on such a small panel, but just looks really good. That probably is going to be an issue on the high resolution graphics because that will, it won't perform all that well when we're trying to push it to the max, but we'll see. Actually, I'm not going to run OBS while I run the graphics card. Geekbench, just check that we've got that all allocated still. Yep, 32 gigabytes ready to roll. Run the GPU benchmark. I don't think I'm going to run it with this amount given over to the graphics cards, but we will see. But the fact that you can give it that much RAM and still have 32 gigabytes left over for the system is quite insane, really, at this price point, as my desktop has 64 gigabytes of DDR4, much slower RAM than this. So no, in that test, didn't improve things, actually 36,000 there, although I guess I'm back to the variable TDP as well. So generally though, really impressed by these numbers. I'm certainly going to have to remember to get my RAM back. But what will really tell is how does it actually work in the real world, running my programs and to some extent my games. Yeah, video editing has been good, and by the way, this is the inbuilt microphone if you're interested. I've edited this whole video on it, and it's been a smooth experience. That's okay. I'm a few days into owning this thing now, and I can tell you I've not been disappointed at all. I really just wanted this. This is one of those purchases which is just like, I really want this machine, and I wanted it to be good, and I can safely say that it is good. It's just so flipping cool. It really is. Been playing a little bit of game on it. I've taken it to the sort of little beach cabin where we stay, where space is a bit of a premium, and certainly it worked well. Just less of an event to pull this thing out and do a quick bit of work than it is a big 16-inch laptop. I've worked with it in my car whilst the kids are at clubs, and yeah, that's worked really good as well. And I've gamed on it as well, and that surprised me how much I've enjoyed that. Question still remains about the battery and this thumbprint reader. I can't seem to get that to work, even though it's definitely already enrolled. Yes, the fingerprint reader worked. Hooray. But I think that's more of a Windows setting thing rather than a GPD thing. And I do have a complaint about it, but I'll get to that in a moment. Incidentally, a couple of things. They did actually ship me, along with the American charger, they did ship me a UK converter. So don't lose that. That was just loose in the sort of shipping box rather than in the actual product box. So at least they have covered that. I don't know whether that's really quite good enough, but it's there. But will it last a full flight? That is certainly a question. So I've gone ahead, and have you noticed this? Like, you make a purchase and you think one thing's going to be great, and you end up making lots of accessory purchases for it. So one thing I brought here is the Anker power bank, which should give me 100 watts of fast charging for charging something like a laptop. So let's see if that's good enough. Of course, I've already spent the sort of upwards of £150 on a 2 terabyte drive, which is working great in there now. And that was pretty easy to fit as well. I've been editing the video on it, it's been seamless on it, but I just want to know, because this 25,000 milliamp hours works out about 100 watt hours. It should charge this laptop fully, as long as this will give me 100 watts out. So what are the two cords here? And you can charge 4 things at once, it says. A single port can deliver 100 watts, powering a 16-inch MacBook Pro M3 to 80% in just 30 minutes, so it should manage with this one as well. Dual built-in cables, doubles as a strap, quite clever I suppose. A 2.5 foot retractable cable. Okay, it's only got 20% at the minute, 22%, but let's just plug it in and see if that will deliver enough to charge my laptop. It should, with power delivery. Yes, that is powering it. It's giving me a little readout of the power there. So that's good news, but that's another sort of £100 I've spent on it. And of course, that's not just for one thing. And I've got an A output and another USB-C output and another USB-C here as well. So that's quite cool. Oh, I see, just tug it and it rewinds back in. Which one charges it, or doesn't it matter? Oh, nice pouch for it. Always welcome as well. In and out there as well. So that one, I guess, charges it. I'll plug that in. And then the case I bought from them, about 30 quid. It's rather nice though. Pretty nice for chucking in a bag, that case, quite like that. There's a Thunderbolt 3 dock to actually dock that at my laptop, another sort of £100 there. And then because I have enjoyed gaming on it so far, one thing I will say is that in the higher spec games, it did get a bit hot when running it for higher TDPs, and it did work really well, and more on that in a future video because I have really enjoyed gaming on it actually. I thought, well, actually, okay, if I want to sort of throw that up on my TV or something, or a larger monitor and sit back, then it'd be nice to just be able to play games with it. And obviously this will work with any gaming console. Then I thought I might as well just get myself an actual controller. And this is the sort of reviewed as the cheapest acceptable Xbox style controller for games. And this seems really quite nice. Just sort of 20 quid from Amazon. The game's Nova Lite, it is called, and it's got all the buttons that you will need for playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I've really enjoyed so far. Cool. My point is, it adds up. And well, if on top of that you also need to get a eGPU to play AAA games on 4K, then at this point, might you be as well to buy a desktop? I don't know, the jury's out. But I am certainly really enjoying this. And the point is, if you're used to your desktop apps, if you're used to the way Windows works, if you're used to managing files with the File Explorer in Windows, if you're used to navigating around full desktop apps with keyboard shortcuts, you're going to have a much better time on a Windows device than you will on, say, an Android device or an iPad as well. And then you've got a mini device, which is incredibly powerful as well. I think this is a really good thing. I think this is an excellent mini PC. I'm really enjoying my time with it. Sure, the little mini keyboard will be a bit cramped for longer typing sessions. And I think you'll find yourself wanting to dock this in a lot of situations. It's not a portable desktop, if you like. But the thing is, it's absolutely capable of doing all of the things that I want a PC to do. And you can do that, yeah, wherever you are. I have found so far that using a bit of a mix of the pointer when you really need a positive click on something and the touchscreen interface has been just fine, really. Sure, there are times where I'm going to want to carry a mouse and use that as well. But generally, I've found that absolutely fine. I've managed, if I use my little 10-inch cutting workspace here in Premiere, I've managed to actually fly through most of an edit just here on the one screen, and then I can plug this same laptop in to an external monitor when I get home and finish that edit off. It's been absolutely fine. I've also found the thing, importantly, cool enough for working for long sessions on your lap. So that's really good, that's really important. Although sometimes when you open it, you accidentally flick these buttons on the back, and that is a little bit of a nuisance. So one of these is maps to screenshot, so that is actually a bit annoying that you accidentally press that sometimes, but I can change that, I'm sure, at some point. So the first game I played was Forza Horizon. It did its kind of benchmark mode, and it came back with 1440p and low settings. So, okay, that's fine. If it works, that's wonderful. But then I was playing that and it did manage 60 frames per second consistently, but then occasionally there was this massive stutter and you'd just be put into the wall, so that was a bit frustrating. But I found that as soon as I plugged it in, obviously the settings took over and it upped the TDP of the graphics chip in there, and it did manage just fine actually at that high resolution with 60 frames per second. It was just absolutely solid. And then I found in the motion assist, you can actually increase that TPD. So leaving it at 35 watts, actually, it managed Forza Horizon so far, and I'm not as far through the game as I will be, I hope, but even in situations with racing with multiple cars, it's been pretty solid at that resolution. All on kind of low settings, of course. But that's good news, and you can take the TDP even higher. And then last night I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I really enjoyed that. I got as far as blowing up the mecha reactor, no issues whatsoever, all at 1440p, and yeah, I will see. I'm actually going to plug that into my 4K monitor and try that with the gamepad, because you can actually increase the TDP up to 54 watts, so we'll see how that goes. So at least you can play those games at the very least in HD at good enough frame rates, and you probably won't need that docked eGPU unless you want to go up to that ultra high settings and a 4K monitor. So I think that's great news. The screen just looks fabulous for all of those things. It's really sharp at that size. I can't fault that screen, to be honest. Battery life is something that I find I'm going to struggle with, and we will see there. I've tried playing around with the TDP for video editing, and I found that I can get smooth playback down at a 12 watt TDP, so I think I'll stick with that for a bit and see how long I actually get in real world use of editing videos on battery power. We'll see. If it can manage 2 hours, then that's probably acceptable. With the power bank, that should actually get me through a sort of medium length flight. But I think, yeah, it's gonna be living with a massive power bank, carrying around that for some time with this. So again, you've got to ask yourself whether for you, would it not be better to have a larger laptop with a larger battery pack inside? I don't know. But the thing is, it did handle that edit really well so far. I'm going to add this bit of video to it and finalize that edit next. But generally, the whole business of pulling out an x86 PC, where normally you only got the sort of space and time to pull out an Android tablet or something, that's been a real pleasure. It's about that continuity of workflow. I'm so used to working on Windows that I can get most of what I need to do, not as efficiently as with my multi-monitor setup. Most of it I can do on here. And in fact, the fact that you could plug that in and run a multi-monitor setup as a one and done PC for everything, I'm struggling to see past this. But here's the big drag that I promised you earlier on. Because GPD, they aren't actually licensing the term Copilot Plus PC from Microsoft, none of that stuff is set up in Windows here. Despite the hardware being actually designed for it, you're not getting any of the AI PC settings. I can't even see the studio camera settings, which previously has been the only way that I've actually managed to get an MPU to fire up. None of the AI stuff, none of the live subtitles seems to be activated on here. So I think that's really quite a nuisance, really. And I've done my research, and there just seems to be a whole lot of other AI PC users just wondering when they're going to get software that actually uses that MPU chip that they've bought. And actually, if you're looking to buy the Ryzen AI 370HX, it's probably on the promise of it being a good AI experience and great efficiency. So far, those two things, great battery life and AI experience, I'm not having on this computer. So the HX 370 has this big little architecture with 4 performance cores and then 8 efficiency cores. So it's that big little architecture. So if you're not getting that efficiency out of it, and you're not getting the efficiency out of the totaling 80 TOPS of AI performance supposedly across the CPU, GPU, and the MPU there, if you're not getting that, then maybe you're better off just saving money and going for one of the previous Zen 5 generation of Ryzen 9s. So far, it feels like to me I'm getting better gaming performance than actually people are getting off the previous generation in the WinMax 2. And there's one more thing, that all these latest AMD chips, they seem to have soldered RAM, meaning that they're fast as fudge. They really are absolutely fast, but you won't be able to upgrade them later. So I think that at this present point, if you're buying one of the new Ryzen 300 series, I would probably max out the RAM that you can afford right now, because 32 gigabytes of RAM is the standard now. That's what I would say for a PC. 32 gigabytes is your sort of baseline. And if you bought one at 32 gigabytes now, it would be acceptable for some time, I'm sure. But you might feel that it lags behind when 64 gigabytes is the norm. So if you're going to be changing between lots of software, and especially if you're creative workflow, or you want to game and then do some work and then go back to a different program, then I would suggest that having more RAM is going to be useful to you later. And perhaps that great performance is due to me apportioning 8 gigabytes of RAM to the GPU in here, and still having plenty left over for all of my other workflows. Good times on computers.